Today I'm incredibly honored to be able to invite you to a discussion about supply chains, carbon negativity, also improvements in our food systems. Quite a diverse set of topics, all very important. My name is Lubomila. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PlanA, as well as the co-founder of the Green Tech Alliance, a community of more than 1,000 solutions for climate change. And today I'm going to have the chance to speak to visionaries, innovators, and people that have been dedicating their time to solve some of the biggest issues that society faces. If we look at COVID, and all of us are still living with the reality of that, we can think that something kind of stopped. We feel that society stopped and all of our activities were disturbed. True, but if you look at actually the emissions that were reduced, it was only 7% for one whole year, which means that there's some more fundamental issues that we need to address as a society in order to build a sustainable future for all. Today, I have the honor to welcome 4 speakers. First, I would like to invite Alexander Piutti, who's the co-founder and CEO of SPRK. SPRK is an incredible company focusing on extending the life cycle of waste. And how he does that, he's going to tell us in the next 5 minutes.
All right, perfect. Okay, do we have slides? Excellent.
There we go.
Can you guys see the presentation?
Feel free to stand up if you want. Or
that's fine, that's fine. Okay, yeah. So my name is Alex. I'm the founder and CEO of SPRK.global. And our mission is really, as you pointed out, to eliminate food waste in the global supply chain. So it's a B2B play while driving down climate damage. I'll talk about this a little bit. So here we see the 2 Bills, Bill Gates and Bill Tai, both talking about technology, how technology can play a role to accelerate a solution, to really crack or help crack the problem. And so do we. So SPRK is really about, as I said, consolidating food oversupply into us, basically into a platform. It's AI-driven. It's a huge redistribution exercise, basically, while protecting resource and the climate. And what surprised me is when I started thinking about a solution 5 years ago, I didn't see a global B2B food marketplace. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in Europe. It doesn't exist in the US. It doesn't exist. So huge opportunity to fix the problem. And what's the problem? So food waste is not the problem. It's really a result. And what's the underlying cause? So 30–40% of food overproduction tells you it's not efficient. It's intransparent. It's fragmented. So there's no matchmaking. And that's our solution. So while you systematically start matchmaking of supply and demand or oversupply and demand, you automatically fix the supply chain. That's our mission. Now, there's also a strong connection to climate. 8–10% of our greenhouse gas emissions are caused by food waste. So if you drive down overproduction, you naturally also drive down the climate damage. And to give you a number, 1.6 billion tons of perfect edible food. That's what we talk about every single year. Or the German number is 12–18 million tons of waste every year. So huge problem, huge opportunity, huge chance also. Now, if you look at industry, and this is our starting point, we save people disposal costs. So if we pick up or we matchmake, basically, we save them cost. So it's an economic argument. At the same time, NGOs, for example, they chronically lack budgets and good food. So also there's a redistribution opportunity. How do we do it? So we focus on the entire supply chain, including agriculture, production, wholesale, retail, pretty much anybody. So we don't focus on one spot. It's a systemic exercise. Now on the demand side, we also talk to big players, small players, mid-sized players, people who produce food. So we reconnect the supply chain in a sense. To give you an example, so in a simplified version, you see the supply chain on the left-hand side, pasta, tomatoes. So 2 options here. Number 1, we forward, so that goes fairly quickly. Or if there's enough supply, we transform food from tomato into tomato soup, into tomato ketchup, while engaging strong channels on the demand side. And because we talk about circularity, so it's a huge, wonderful opportunity to bring new products to the market, to retail, to wholesale, B2C products. As we see, these are all products that we let produce, basically. And the same recipe holds true for B2B products, just more volume. And we also opened, as a showcase, basically, our first SPRK Daily in Berlin-Schöneberg. You're most invited to come by and have some wonderful food, yeah, to engage society, basically, because 40% of food waste is in the society. So we need to involve them for a comprehensive solution. As I said, we have a big heart for NGOs. Yeah, so when we started and we ramped up, we gave so far, I think, 100 tons of good food to NGOs. And we're also engaging NGOs internationally. Yeah, so we just shipped 20 tons of potato to Mallorca. And there's a lot of poverty right now, given the lack of tourism. Now, when you look at Tesla and business models, and you might know how Tesla makes money, not revenue, but really money, it's a smart model because they're selling CO2 certificates. We can do the same thing. Yeah? So basically, if we monetize, driving down the overproduction of food, at the same time with climate credits, we can bring them to market with our partners and share revenue and profit. Obviously, we can't do this by ourselves. Yeah, we're a tech company, so we need mission partners, on the food side, on supply chain integration, like Lufthansa Industry Solutions, or people who help us to actually bring out the CO2 certificate. We're much in line, obviously, to the SDGs. We focus on number 12, circularity, much in line with 13, climate, and then also to drive down hunger, because, given the redistribution opportunity, while building alliances. And this is what we show at the bottom. So we're engaged in many networks when it comes to food, logistics, tech, Berlin, local networks, innovation, startup scene. We're 25 people now ramping up, and you guys are most invited to join our mission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Now I would like to invite Marco Lescher, who is the customer care and service director of Nespresso Germany since 2019. He's going to be talking to us about agroforestry and the supply chain that is obviously quite complex when it comes to such a big brand. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm standing up, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, looking at the microphone. Yeah, very excited to be here. Thanks a lot. I'm Marco. I'm working for Nespresso Germany. And basically, I make sure that we deliver our premium products to our customers in Germany. And of course, make sure that we look at every request they have. And hopefully, this morning you already had a great cup of coffee. Despite the hot weather conditions, summer finally arrived at least to Germany. But talking about weather and about severe weather conditions, and more importantly about climate change, that puts a lot of pressure on the coffee farms. And this is due to, of course, extreme temperature fluctuations, heavy rainfalls, and drought, which really puts the coffee crops at risk. And let me take you to a little farm to Costa Rica. And we work with these farmers together in the context of our AAA program. And I borrow a quote from this farmer. And basically, this farmer in the La Georgia region was questioned, why do you care so much about the forest? And he basically answered, without water, there is no life. Our solution at Nespresso is planting trees on the coffee fields to have a sustainable, high-quality coffee cultivation. And this tree planting can either be done by planting trees on the borders of the coffee fields, or, as we call it, intercropped, meaning alternating with the coffee crops. So why do we do this? What is the advantage of really putting trees on the coffee fields? And that basically is, first of all, a tree really provides shade for the coffee crops. And that helps really not only to have a high quality coffee, but as well to have a sustainable coffee cultivation. Of course, trees retain water. They, of course, maintain a soil moisture. They sequester carbon. But there is well an element to create biodiversity on the farm, which of course can help to reduce fertilizers or pesticides usage. We at Nespresso have planted 5 million trees since 2014 on the coffee farms. So in or around coffee farms. That is called basically our agroforestry program. And we've done this in the context of our AAA program. So what many might not know, Nespresso works together with farmers in 15 countries with over 110,000 farmers. Many of them smallholders, meaning they have small farms. And we founded this program 2003 together or in collaboration with Rainforest Alliance. And how do we do this? 400 agronomists look after these people. They train, they give guidance, and there's a clear set of objectives as well when it comes to the quality of the coffee, but as well the productivity of the farm. And of course, sustainable parts are in there. And of course, social factors. How can you make a living out of coffee cultivation? And just taking back from Costa Rica, coming to the whole, let's say, greenhouse gas emissions of coffee. When you look at the carbon footprint of a cup of coffee or of a Nespresso Lungo cup, this is dominated by the usage stage, so making the coffee at home, and by the green coffee supply, so growing, cultivating, and processing. In third line or thereafter comes everything around packaging and as well our aluminium capsule. And then where it comes closer to Germany, we use aluminium for our capsule because we say it's like an aroma safe. It protects the coffee against air, light, and humidity, and is our chosen material. And there are 2 points when talking about aluminium. The first part is, by the end of the year, we will use, or all the capsules for end consumers are made with recycled aluminium, a recycled content over 80%. And the second part is, how do we really engage customers in bringing back the capsules? Because an aluminium capsule can, in a collective system, effectively be sorted and brought back to a recycling scheme. That is, of course, one part, engaging customers, but we're here, as well at the Green Tech, to look for ideas, to as well partner, to have further ideas on how we can achieve that every capsule returns to Nespresso or to the collective system. Time's up.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Marco. And now I'd like to invite Ole Sivertsen, the CEO of DesertControl, to tell us a bit more about your work on this important mission you've set yourself on.
Thank you. So, wow. I mean, the ground is shaking. Can you feel that? No? The soil that we have under our feet and its vital life is collapsing really at an alarming pace. This is happening kind of out of sight, out of mind for most people, though. But I can feel this, like deep in my heart, really. 12 million hectares of fertile land is lost, perishing to desertification and droughts annually. 12 million hectares. That's 3 times the size of Denmark. If we break it down into football fields, it's 2,000 football fields lost every hour. If we line up these football fields along the highway, you have to drive at 210 kilometers per hour just to keep up as they turn into desert. Healthy soil is also full of life. 95% of all earthly species of biological life may be found in soil. And the soil captures and stores more carbon than in the entire atmosphere, and more than is stored in all living plants, animals, and human beings combined. The 12 million hectares that we lose every year is actually in weight of carbon capturing biological life equal to 25 million African elephants silently lost every year. Now today, June 17th, is actually the World Day to combat desertification and drought. Now this is not a day to be observed in silence, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a call to action. A call to action to take part in a race against desertification and the degradation of vital topsoil. we have already lost 1/5 of the fertile land that we have on this planet. This is actually harming the livelihood of nearly half the world's population, and its knock-on impacts on biodiversity loss and accelerating climate change is further really threatening all life that we have on Earth. Research actually shows that if the current pace of desertification and soil degradation continues, global agriculture may have less than 60 harvests left. Well, I mean, that is if we don't run out of water first. Because growing food requires water, really a lot of water. The water footprint of just like a hamburger, how much is that? It's approximately 2,000 liters. Just a small cup of coffee can take more than 130 liters. Maybe Nespresso will do better. But that's what we're looking at. So agriculture is, in fact, already consuming more than 70% of all available freshwater resources on Earth. And when more soil turns to sand, we will need even more water just to maintain current levels of production. And reality is that we will actually need, due to a growing population, more food in the next 40 years than this planet has grown over the last 500. So how do we win this race? The solution may be right under our feet. Stopping desertification and restoring the degraded soil ecosystems that we have on this planet can actually offset 5 to 6 gigatons of CO2 annually. And by fostering soil health to halt and reverse the deforestation on the Earth, we can add another 8 gigatons. Now that is 57% of the Paris Agreement's 2DS target from nature-based solutions alone. So I'm personally involved in innovation and green tech initiatives to stop and reverse desertification and foster soil health in areas with really, really challenging climatic conditions, water scarcity, and the results that we are seeing that we can actually change this is truly inspiring. I mean, I've been witnessing over the last couple of years desert lands, in temperatures of 50 degrees Celsius, turning from dust to oases of food, vegetables, and fruits. So if we continue with this and improve the health of soil with better water holding capacity, we can actually increase agricultural yield with way less usage of water and fertilizer. And this in turn will actually make sure that we are reducing pollution, and we're also increasing the carbon capture alongside with actually bettering the livelihood of the farmers. So the world is there. It's open for us to change it. And my question to you is, are you ready to join this race?
Thank you so much, Ole. Now we have Daniel Egger, who's the Chief Commercial Officer of Climeworks. And if I can allow myself to say, this is essentially the company that made direct air capture mainstream. So, Daniel, welcome to stage.
Thank you very much. When we would like to stop climate change, we need to be on net zero by 2050. But what does this mean, net zero? Net zero means that we cannot emit more CO2 to the atmosphere than we remove. This means that for every molecule we send out to the atmosphere, we need to physically remove again one molecule from the atmosphere. That's a bit of a challenge. To reach that, first, we need to stop to reduce CO2 as much as possible. But this will not be enough. There will be emissions which are unavoidable, and they we need to remove from the atmosphere. And Climeworks has developed a technology and implemented into machines which are exactly doing that. We call this direct air capture. The core of a direct air capture machine is a huge metal box. And in this metal box, we have a filter material which is attracting the CO2. So we simply draw air through this metal box, and the CO2 sticks on this filter. That's how we capture it. By heating it up, we can again release the CO2 and then use it, or we can also store it deep underground. And this is a project we're just now commissioning in Iceland. We're calling this machine Orca, like the big whale. And this machine is going to capture around 4,000 tons of carbon dioxide every year. And this CO2, then we're going to give over to a partner of us, to Carbfix. And Carbfix take this CO2 and puts it deep underground for permanent storage. So this CO2 then is mixed with water. So we're basically doing nothing else as a highly concentrated fizzy water, so no magic. And this water is then pumped underground, some 700-800 meters. And there, the CO2 starts to react with rock formations there. So we're basically turning the CO2 into stone. So this means that this CO2 is never getting back to us. And this permanent storage is really important. Why? When we're going to fight climate change, we need to have solutions which are not handing over this problem to the next generation or solving the problem for the next 100 years or next couple of 100 years. When we're trying to stop climate change, we need to have solutions which are stopping it right from the beginning, forever and permanently. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. There was clearly a line similar amongst all of your statements related to collaboration. You are dependent on the farmers and you're working with them to make their livelihood better. You are working with a lot of different NGOs, organizations. You all were mentioning different stakeholders involved in your work, and you also mentioned even a company name. Can you speak about more how is collaboration embedded into the mindset of the company? We can start from you if you want, Marco.
Collaboration, yeah. I think with many partners, for example, the tree planting is done, for example, with the partner like Pure Projet. We worked a lot together, and we get, I think, several insights, and of course, covering 15 countries as well. When looking at coffee cultivation, is something where we rely on our partners as well in the context of the AAA program, for example, which together with Rainforest Alliance and of course with many organizations on the ground, let's say, that's for us a clear thing to build this network. And I think without the partners it would not work, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so in our case, it's an art, let's say. Yeah, so and despite all the high tech and technology and AI, you know, it comes down to people, right? It's like individuals, like human beings, like us, right? And you know, to tell you, when I was a young founder, like I pitched like crazy. You know, I pitched my idea, my business, and was like, you know, like why do people get up and leave the room? Yeah. So it's really to understand, you know, the stakeholders' agenda. Yeah, to really build alliances and ecosystems. Yeah, like in our case, it's, you know, maximum diverse. You have NGOs who have no technology background, no know-how, no business models, basically, but they are integral part of our strategy. Yeah, at the same time, you have professionals in the supply chain who like to maximize profit. Yeah, as I was taught in business school, you know, shareholder value. Yeah, and so that's not true anymore. Yeah, so like we don't embrace shareholder value because it's against, you know, it's against the market. It's, you know, if you focus on shareholder value, you optimize against the market. Yeah, and that short term may be an opportunity, but long term it doesn't work. Yeah, so what we, you know, all of us like to achieve is systemic change. Yeah, so we have to think as part of our DNA, what's the agenda of an NGA? What's the agenda of a supply chain participant? What's the agenda of a system integrator? And then see what's the overlap. And that becomes the core. And this is why we focus on SDG number 17. So before technology kicks in, we need to build trust and relationships to invite folks into a mission. And it has to be a mission for them also, not just for us. And then slowly, you know, the technology can scale, but it's much later. First, it's, you know, the human interaction.
Anyone like to?
Yeah, I can also add to that. I mean, the trust part is, of course, extremely important. And I think, I mean, when we're looking at solutions that also should contribute to solve the climate change challenges that we have, we need to have a holistic approach. and to understand that not one company has all the solutions. You need to work together in a holistic approach. I think the example with smallholder farmers is an excellent one, right? Where it's about the technologies that you actually apply to make that business more sustainable. And then, as an example, we have solutions to cultivate more resilience into the soil itself. But that's just one part of the solution. Then there are solutions to help with, making more effective the utilization of irrigation techniques and water, forestry techniques, and all of these things. And then you have the carbon capture around this, all the way to the Gold or Vera certification of the carbon credits that you again can drive into a circularity by actually making sure that these funds for the carbons that you are capturing actually goes back to the smallholders so they can reinvest in becoming even more climate smart and climate resilience. So I think it's about thinking holistically, and collaboration is the key.
I remember a customer meeting I had around 2 or 3 years ago. There was, of course, the customer, there was a supplier with me, and there was a business partner with me. And then in the coffee break, they said, hey, Dan, it's cool. I mean, we have Climeworks, you're solving the problem. And then I told them, if this would be the case, then we wouldn't be sitting together. So if we want to solve this problem, we need to have pioneering customers, taking a risk, also giving their names for solutions. This is really important, references. We need to have suppliers believing a solution, investing into their process, into their product to make our products better. But we also need to have business partners which are developing together business cases with us. So I wasn't able to take all the responsibility, so I gave them a little bit back. But on the good side is they also can take influence. And I think this is the positive thing. All of us can take an influence. And this is the good thing in collaborations.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I'll pick up again on your perspective. We spoke briefly before starting the panel about the fact that there's been historically, especially over the last few years, a lot of criticism on offsetting. And now all of these carbon neutrality claims seem to be a bit not so scientifically backed. When do you think the moment will come that society is mature enough to be able to understand that this kind of technology should be the one that you're providing, should be the one that really focuses on long-term solution that is kind of allowing us to really feel comfortable when we buy these credits? How do you think about this topic, and do you proactively get to be asked, how do you compare yourself to an offsetting credit?
I mean, just to distinguish the offsetting and what we are doing, offsetting or avoiding emissions normally describes technologies which are reducing emissions somewhere, and you can basically buy this avoidance of emissions. In comparison, what we are doing is we are physically removing CO2 from the atmosphere. I think what we need there is a lot of transparency. So we need to be open in what we are doing. We also need to have standards certifying this. I think this is again trust building, which is really important there. I mean, if you look at the scientific level or on the regulation level, I think the topic is there. So there is an understanding that reducing emission is not enough. So we also need to remove emissions, and we need to incorporate that into regulations, into our business models. And I think then it starts to change. It needs a lot of education, definitely, and it also needs to a lot of transparency from the providers explaining what we are doing. I cannot tell you time. I hope it will be tomorrow. Probably not.
Let's see. Maybe just again for context giving, can you explain the concept of agroforestry? You, of course, explained it in your speech, but yep. I think for some people it might be something novel.
Yeah, basically, do I hear still? Yeah. Basically, what we then talk about is a kind of insetting, because you're planting the trees in the value chain. And in the coffee fields, which basically have effects, not, of course, mainly as well for the smallholder farmers, but for every farm, basically, and has positive effects on the farm itself. So, for example, when trees are their shades, the climate on the farm changes, it adapts better to climate change. And reduced irrigation is one part, reduced fertilizers, for example, can be one part. So that drives down and reduces, of course, the emissions of the farm itself. So it is the way, or let's say, insetting or agroforestry, combining trees, fruit trees, together with the coffee crops. Of course, there are other things besides coffee, but in our case, it's coffee. And has then a positive effect as well on the coffee crop. Yeah, that's basically the principle of insetting. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. Important context, because it's not always clear to people how does this really matter to, not only improving the ecosystem, but also improving the livelihoods of people. So it's really good that you're giving this.
Yeah, that's maybe adding. Of course, when you plant trees, there are of course fruit trees as well. This gives additional, or can give additional income for the farmers besides coffee. So selling fruits and etc. So this gives some more positive effects, as well as supporting, of course, the financial situation of the smallholder farmers.
Yeah. 2 more questions, and then we're going to open up to the public to ask questions, so prepare yourselves. Alex, a question to your topic. You gave some really scary statistics about food waste, and you also mentioned a few locations that clearly are outside of Germany. Is your business since day one international? Are you focusing on supporting the European ecosystem? How do you operate with your partners? And how do you make sure that this is also sustainable?
Yeah, completely. So we want to signal with our name, SPRK.global, we want to signal this is a global solution, or could be a global solution. And the way we do it is, building alliances through our technology, right? It's like we inject our technology into the supply chain as a neutral player. We're inviting most everyone to participate, basically. And, platforms we know, including Amazon, Flixbus, Auto1, they're all platforms, basically. So it usually takes, let's say, 2 to 3 years, and they go sideways, they orchestrate themselves, basically. But then when they scale exponentially. And that's our plan, to say, already now, you need a starting point as an entrepreneur. This is why we started in Berlin, but we could be in Tel Aviv, we could be in San Francisco, we could be anywhere, basically. But that's our starting point because we're local, we have our network. But already now we're seeing through Mallorca and other things, basically. Eastern Europe, supply chain is international, it's global, so we should be global, right? So solutions should be global, but you need to go step by step by step, yeah? And just to add one point to the previous question when it comes to CO2, I was really intrigued when I started to understand the interdependencies between climate and food waste. Yeah, so more than 25% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from food production. Yeah, now if you combine the numbers and you say 30-40% overproduction. Yeah, now if we achieve to reduce, basically, what a massive effect this is as a climate credit source. Yeah, and then offsetting kicks in. Yeah, but we need sources to really free up these credits that we can all use and share, yeah. And having gone to the same business school as Elon Musk, I was really intrigued to study their business model, which is really smart. To then also go to business model. Yeah, this is not to maximize profits, but to really invite folks to participate in the value creation. Yeah, which is a little bit abstract because if you drive something down and you monetize something which becomes less, basically, it's abstract. But that's exactly what Tesla does, and we can do the same. Yeah, and this is not just food supply chain; it's anybody basically contributing to this climate action in our certificate, for example, to form these credits that we can all use. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Oleg, can you explain exactly DesertControl's business model? How do you make revenue and obviously good impact for the planet?
Yeah. So what we have done is that we have invented a process that creates a liquid compound based on natural minerals such as clays that we liquefy into something as thin as water. So you can basically apply it on the top of your soil on the surface. It will percolate in and it will provide a water holding capability in a completely degraded soil or even in desert sand. So the results of this is 40-50% water savings and comparable saving of fertilizers and nutrients in these kind of environments. So we have started out as a startup, basically with a project delivery model direct to customers in the beginning, while we are automating and digitizing and completing the engineering of all our technologies of the reactors that is processing this liquid, etc. And then in the next run, we are looking to create like a mobile soil health kitchen platform that basically can scale exponentially throughout the world. I mean, there are 110 countries in the world suffering from desertification and soil degradation, in addition to huge opportunities in the entire food production and agricultural industry. So we need a platform where we can create jobs and opportunities in local communities, as well as to address the larger players that is consuming those 70% of fresh water that is being used for agriculture in the world.
Who's your most typical client?
So right now, our typical client, I mean, it's really in two main sectors from the beginning. It's agriculture, so farmers, and then taking care of forests and nature reserves to reduce the water consumed for this. And then it's also commercial greeneries, landscapes, everything from parks, city parks, green areas. And I get the question a lot of the time, sort of, if you're so impact-driven, should you be focusing on like golf courses and green parks and things like that as well? And the answer is that in a lot of these countries where these green spaces exist, if they were not there, it would be extremely warm, right? Because green areas, they capture carbon, they lower the temperature, they remove the dust, but it takes a lot of water. So we need to reduce the water for the green landscapes to shift that over to increase food production. And I think COVID-19 has shown that more than anything, right? Because suddenly you see that in a crisis, every country for themselves, the supply chains are not as strong as we thought. So national food security and self-sufficiency in food production becomes really important.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
So just connecting the dots, okay? So if we achieve to drive down overproduction, we free up space, agricultural space, right? Good soil, yeah? What would be your recommendation to say, how do we start reusing that space that becomes available?
I think it's about reusing space in a smart way that fosters biodiversity restoration. That's what I like about agroforestry as an example, because it's not about a tree planting project with a monocrop. If we continue planting monocrops, they are gonna drive themselves extinct, right? Because you need the biodiversity mixtures to even have that thrive and survive. But it's about taking care of the existing land areas that we have. I get questions from the administration of Bolsonaro in Brazil, for example, where they're saying, could we in some way make sure we retain resilience and fertility of the agricultural land that we have today? Because they are not cutting down the Amazon forest for fun, right? It's because the land is desertified and completely depleted. So the only place to find new agricultural space is to remove the forest, right? Because there is fertile soil there. So I think it's about looking at these scenarios. I think smart reusage to drive biodiversity, but also to maintain the productivity on the areas that we have today, so we don't lose more forest. Because I mean, it's nice to plant trees, but let's make sure we keep the ones that we have as well.
Right.
For sure, yeah. And for those of you that maybe don't have context, monoculture is essentially when crops are being planted for kilometers. In Amazon itself, a lot of the deforestation happens for soy and other cultures that essentially end up then killing the whole ecosystem. And one of the solutions is actually permaculture. In China, the big project that was super successful, it took 10, 15 years. Now, basically, they've been able to restore kilometers of land just because they allowed for nature to exist as it does. I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. Please don't be shy. You can see that we're a cozy circle of interested people. So anyone interested in asking some questions? Yes, please. Just 1 second. There's a microphone behind you.
Sure. Thank you. So I have a question regarding the soils, and especially whether hydroponics is also being taken into consideration, and does it play a role at all in saving the soils and preventing desertification of our planet?
So I think when it comes to making sure that we can feed a growing population, all methodologies of actually food production, be it hydroponics, be it virtual indoor farming and all the different concepts that we have will play a very important role. Hydroponics as such is a bit of a different concept. There are various ways of actually trying to do agricultural crops without any soil at all. But I think we need those things. And we see hydroponic projects where, for example, you're extracting the nutrients of the process and actually using for fertilizer to enrich the soil, which is a very good way to combine these technologies. But as I say, I think we need all approaches to drive food security and sustainability for the planet. And I think we need to think about things holistically so that we reuse techniques from the different areas. And we also need to think about larger scale ecosystem restoration. If I may, I can mention one project that is, especially today, since it's the World Day for Combating Desertification and Drought, is the Great Green Wall Initiative, which is about regreening and restoring the ecosystems in the Sahel region. The 8,000 kilometers from Senegal to Djibouti across Africa, regreening 100 million hectares of land. A project that will capture 250 million tons of carbon every year, create 10 million green jobs in rural areas. And that's about soil restoration, about ecosystem restoration. There will be other projects and other technologies involved there as well to drive this holistically.
Amazing and really inspiring. Any other questions? You, Simon.
Hi, my name is Nikita. I have a question for Marco, maybe more directly. How do you incorporate life cycle analysis, like product life cycle analysis, in the organization from the technological perspective? So, do you have a process? Do you have tools to do that? Is there something that is difficult to achieve? And kind of further from that, on the certification in general, so looking at the overall supply chain, do you think there are enough tools to be able to capture all the impact from product life cycle, and to then be able to sort of have a number and certify, and do you already use some carbon certifications? Calculate them and already use them.
Basically, the life cycle analysis we set up with one of our partners, Quantis, which basically where we look at the complete cycle from a technical perspective, of course, really from the coffee sourcing, including deforestation, for example, and then going all the way to, of course, acknowledging as well recycled content, bringing back to the partner, of course, covering all three scopes, especially what is set as well on the machine usage, for example, at home. So that is all covered. There's, of course, now really make it really work in the company. That's something which is now as well being discussed, how to align this further. That is one part. From a certification point of view, there's now let's say, the net zero strategy 2050 is, of course, there with a reduction of minus 50% 2030. And that is being worked on the certification currently. So there's a little change going in the ISO direction, of course, but certification is being done there currently. And hopefully we're able to communicate something quite in the next couple of months. Yeah. Hopefully that covers the questions. Yeah.
Amazing. We have time for one more question. We have one. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you introduce yourself and also?
Okay, my name is Simon. I'm also a co-founder of the Green Tech Alliance. I think Alex, we talked. Hi. Thanks all for being here.
Sure.
I have a question. I think, or I have the opinion that carbon is simplifying a bigger problem, and it's also a way of greenwashing. So what's your take on it to expand the framework and not only focus on carbon capturing and limiting it to like this one factor?
I think you're you need to be careful about sort of going into a greenwashing area. And I think also we have a tendency to try to make things a little bit too shiny and too fancy and too complex. So I think it's important to really focus on the basic things, sort of how do we actually make things more sustainable, and are we contributing to actually making the world a better place with our business in general? Are we like a plus company or a minus company? And then we can start to take simple things such as, I mean, you know, do I need a cup of coffee with beans from Colombia in Germany? Or could I actually have, created Colombian soil in somewhere closer to home to actually have grown those beans with that same experience closer to home? I mean, we can take very simple things like that and then start to implement them. It's going to be difficult to measure them, but I think we will figure it out along the way.
Yeah, just to add, it's a somewhat difficult discussion, right? Like, because you need to go broad first to see what are the options, then to zoom back in, say like, what are the 1, 2, 3 concrete options? Yeah, and that changes over time. Yeah, but in our case, we like the aspect of business model creativity when it comes to food waste, because it turbocharges the solution. Yeah, so it's not just a food waste solution in itself, which might take some time, yeah. But if you find something which accelerates that solution, yeah, and you are becoming creative on the business model side using mechanisms, I can see that food waste solution in the supply chain works in 4 to 5 years. Yeah, so we're not talking 10 years or 20 years. Yeah, so that truly accelerates. Yeah, and then after 5 years we do something else. Yeah, but we need to think short life cycles to really scale the impact.
Given how much time we have, I would love to wrap it up. First of all, thank you so much for the contributions. I think that this last question is actually one to leave us all thinking, because the truth is that with all the problems that were mentioned here, with our agriculture being disturbed, with our soil being degraded, and also with all new technologies not necessarily being applied at scale, we need to think big. We don't have much time. We're also destroying a lot of different ecosystems on a daily basis. We're wasting a lot of water. So if anything that we can take away from all of these fantastic examples is that there are solutions. And what actually is necessary for us to do as business doers, also as individuals, is to take these solutions and try to apply them on a daily basis as often as possible. Because as long as we don't continue living as usual, going back to normal, what was the quote from post-COVID, then most likely we're going to still have a chance to be living a wonderful life in the coming decades. Thank you so much, and stay in touch.